Before we go any further, if you care about real history, lived experience, and you know the hard lessons families learned when survival was on the line, subscribe to this channel and share this video. What we cover here isn't recycled trivia. It's the kind of knowledge that disappears when people stop paying attention, and this channel exists to make sure it doesn't. When German occupation swept across Europe, families didn't just lose money. They lost homes, tools, livestock, food stores, privacy, legal protection, and honestly, often their names on official records. Entire systems collapsed overnight. What followed wasn't heroic fantasy. It was methodical, quiet survival. Families adapted in ways that modern viewers often miss because the strategies were unglamorous and deeply practical. If you study these patterns closely, you'll find lessons that still apply whenever institutions fail. Property becomes insecure or centralized systems turn hostile. This is how families learned to survive after formal ownership and legal protection disappeared. Once occupation began, paper ownership meant nothing. Deeds, savings accounts and contracts were ignored or confiscated. Families shifted immediately from thinking in terms of property to thinking in terms of control and access. You know, a family that owned land but couldn't farm, it had nothing. Those who survived, well, they learned to hide value in things that could be moved, concealed, or even denied. Tools were broken down and hidden in separate locations. Furniture was hollowed out to store grain, and jewellery that was sewn into clothing seams. These days, the practical application is understanding that resilience means decentralizing what you rely on. Do not store all value in one place, one system, or one format. Redundancy is not paranoia, it is historical normalcy. This is how food security shifted from stockpiles to living systems. Large food stores attracted attention and confiscation. Families learned that visible abundance was dangerous. Instead, they turned gardens into layered systems that looked poor but produced constantly. Root vegetables were planted under weeds. Chickens were hidden in cellars or rotated between neighbours. Fermentation and drying replaced obvious storage. In modern terms, this teaches that food security works best when it looks, well, boring. A freezer full of meat is fragile. A steady ability to grow, preserve, and quietly trade food is resilient. Learn one preservation method deeply rather than owning, many tools you don't know how to use under pressure. This is how skills replaced currency when money became meaningless. Occupation currencies inflated, were replaced, or were rejected entirely. Families who survived longest had at least one skill that others needed immediately. Shoemaking, basic medicine, metal repair, tailoring, animal care, and bread baking became currencies. These skills created protection because usefulness discouraged betrayal. The modern parallel is clear. Skills that solve physical, everyday problems hold value regardless of economic system. Learn skills that cannot be digitized, automated, or shut off remotely. Practice them enough that you can perform under stress, fatigue, and scarcity. So, this is how families used invisibility instead of resistance to stay alive. You know, popular history tends to focus on resistance movements, but actually most families survived by simply avoiding notice altogether. Curtains stayed drawn. Light was carefully controlled. Movement followed predictable, dull patterns. And, well, children were trained not to talk. Survival really depended on appearing unremarkable. But you see, this doesn't mean submission. It means rather strategic restraint. The lesson for today is understanding when visibility is, in fact, a liability. Not every challenge requires confrontation. Sometimes, you know, the smartest move is reducing your profile, simplifying routines, and blending into the background while quietly preserving your capability. This is really how trust networks replaced institutions. Police, courts, and local governments often became tools of occupation. Families shifted loyalty from institutions to people. Survival depended on small, tight networks built on long-term observation, not ideology. For modern viewers, this really underscores the importance of cultivating real-world relationships based on reliability, not just convenience. You know, it's crucial to know who can actually keep a secret, who shows up even when it costs them, and, well, who disappears when the pressure rises. Trust should be tested gradually. This is how families managed to preserve knowledge when education was, you know, restricted or manipulated. Schools closed or sometimes were tightly controlled. Books were banned. So families taught children at home using memory, repetition, and oral tradition. Recipes, measurements, and techniques were memorized rather than written down. So this kept knowledge portable and, well, deniable. Today, it reminds us that our reliance on external systems for learning is indeed a vulnerability. It's crucial to teach essential knowledge verbally, you know? This, you see, is how long-term thinking managed to survive amidst short-term terror. Perhaps the most important fix was psychological. Families who endured these times learned to think in terms of seasons, not just days. They conserved their energy, avoided making panic-driven decisions, and accepted temporary losses to safeguard future survival. Emotional discipline, quite frankly, mattered as much as physical resources. For modern survivalists and historians alike, this is, well, a reminder that endurance beats intensity. Build habits you can maintain quietly over years, not dramatic actions that burn out quickly. These families were not extraordinary people. They were ordinary households, you know, forced to adapt faster than systems could respond. Their fixes were practical, repeatable, and grounded in reality, not ideology. If you want to understand survival honestly, study what worked when everything familiar vanished. If this kind of serious, grounded history matters to you, subscribe to the Legacy of Survival channel, share this video with someone who studies the past seriously, and keep these lessons alive.